You're listening to the Everyday Determinator podcast, brought to you by Anne O'Caffer of the Determinator Collective.
Determinators, and welcome to the Everyday Determinator podcast. In this episode, we're joined by Sara Kolata. Sara is an architect to trade, and she's based in Costa Brava in Spain, and works with architects across the globe to raise their value and present their expertise in ways that benefit not only themselves but also the planet. Hi Sara, it's great to have you with us.
Yeah, it's a pleasure. Thank you so much for inviting me.
You're welcome. I'm really excited to hear about your story. You've pretty much designed your career around aligning your profession of architecture with your own values, even when there was times when that was a challenging thing to do. And I think, sometimes there was a bit of conflict about whether the two of those things could work in harmony. But you have carved out a route that works for you, and you're living what you want to be doing, and now you're helping others to do the same. So that's obviously a wonderful thing. What influenced you towards a career in architecture to begin with?
Yeah, such a good question. And, I really appreciate that you cover a lot of topics in this podcast that are a little bit more of a taboo. Maybe people don't usually share, but I'm super happy because I feel like all these different things that happened in life made me who I am. And it quite soon contributed to having to actually make brave decisions, maybe risky decisions, maybe controversial decisions, but every single step that I took was more and more to basically become who I am. And I think maybe finding also my true self. Architecture came to be when I moved to England. I was very young, like 18, and I did sort of medical high school. So we were prepared to go into medicine. But towards the last years of my high school, I actually realized that I love learning and studying and stuff like this, but I wanted to do something a little bit more creative. Yeah. And I think, moving to England without speaking very good English was already quite a challenge at the time. And I just followed my gut into a foundation year of arts, and I did that in Manchester. So that was sort of the beginnings. And that obviously opened me up towards arts and architecture. And I chose architecture because it called me. So a lot of that was unplanned in a way. But I think the first decision is sort of to not go down the medical path, but actually go somewhere more creative. Was hard to take, but definitely I'm so grateful for that, now looking back.
Especially now after the pandemic and things. I'm certainly glad I'm not doing what I used to do in hospitality and retail and things like that. So yeah, sometimes we do get these lessons, don't we, that we're grateful for. So I know when you started out in your architecture career, you mentioned that you started out in London amongst the sort of influenced really by that glitz and glamour of these celebrity architects and things like that. So what was that like? Obviously you were very young, I think, at the time. That must have been really exciting. London, sort of global city, all the sort of glitz and glam, but is it what you expected it to be?
Yeah, more even than I expected. But to be totally honest, I think I really wanted that kind of glamorous experience. And the first challenge was to learn the language. I remember the first weeks at my foundation year of arts in Manchester was, I was very uncomfortable with my ability to communicate. I had a very strong Polish accent, and obviously Manchester people also speak more Northern Mancunian, so that already was quite a clash. But I was learning and adapting very fast, and about a year and a half in, I decided, I really want to be in like the arts center, like the heart of arts and architecture if it comes to England. And I just thought, another challenging decision to take, but I really want to get into Central St. Martin's. And I actually applied for, after my first year of interior design, I applied to Central St. Martin's. And in order to be perhaps better or get a head start, I learned SketchUp from YouTube, and I made my last project in interior design more of an architecture piece. So that was basically what culminated my first year of studying interior design at the time. But it turned out to be an incredible way to get into St. Martin's. And so I went for the interview with St. Martin's, and they just looked at my portfolio and they said, "You've got some computer skills we haven't taught our students yet. So we would like to offer you a place at year 2. And so I didn't miss anything. I just went to year 2 of architecture. It's amazing. I was ready to repeat year 1, but it didn't happen. So that was really incredible. And I think I just took a massive leap of faith. But also, I remember I applied outside of the traditional sort of schedule of application, and I found an email to the dean, and I wrote him a personal email to say, like, how I felt and how much I wanted to get into St. Martin's. And he offered me an interview outside of the regular, interview time. And I think, at the time, I think I already believed that it's not all about your portfolio and about your application and deadlines, but it's about your personality. And if you really show it and you connect with someone, that can really do wonders. And I think till today, I'm very much driven in that way. I don't quite follow the traditional way of how people get jobs or how people get to places or start companies or, start being who they are. I'm just kind of giving it all a try. Do you know what I mean?
I think that, that sort of being brave enough to take a risk as well, because, a lot of us can maybe find ourselves in that situation and then maybe go, I'll wait until the normal, I'm out with the schedule, so I better not send an email now. But, you've kind of just found a different route in, you've thought outside the box. And I think there's definitely some power to that. Okay, it might not work for everybody in every situation, but why not try it? I mean, what was the worst that could have happened? You said no, or you didn't get a reply, and then you apply at the normal time anyway. So, I think it's great that you've really just sort of like put yourself out there and, took a risk and it worked out. And I think from my understanding of your journey, that's kind of happened quite a bit for you.
A lot, honestly. I have a really weird talent of like getting through the window if they close the door. I've always done it. But, don't get me wrong. It's really not about overconfidence. It doesn't come from that. It's just that sometimes I can't take no for an answer. But also, like, I'm a dreamer and I really want to fulfill some of the dreams. I'm very determined. So I think that's where it's coming from as well. And that thing about like, what's the worst that can happen? If you dream high and dream big and give yourself chances in life, if you don't even succeed at what you've dreamt out to be, you're still going to get halfway through. And that is admirable to a lot of people that haven't even tried. So I always say, try, because at least you see if it worked, and give yourself a chance. I think take that leap of faith. I do understand that a lot of us struggle with that sort of inner voice telling us we're not good enough, and I certainly have it too. But I give myself chances. I think that's the only really difference. But I did certainly use that a lot in life. Just say, oh, let's try it out and see what happens,
I think we could all take a bit of leaf out of that book and be a little bit braver and just try, and I think, it's really important, like you said, it's creating those opportunities for yourself. Sometimes you've got to go out and find those opportunities, and like you said, maybe find the window if the door's shut, or knock a bit harder, or, try something a little bit different, and sometimes it pays off. I know in your case, you were started off in this architecture thing, but then you obviously had this, I guess maybe unsatisfaction at some point, that maybe it wasn't aligned with your values and where you wanted to go. And I think part of that turning point and realization was a conference in Berlin.
Yeah.
Do you want to tell us sort of how that sort of realization came around, that maybe you love architecture, but it's not quite aligned with what you value as a person?
Yeah. So I think just to sort of go back a little bit, trace our steps back a little bit to what we just talked about. Someone once told me, and that's only putting words to an experience I had that I haven't really been able to like rephrase in such way, but I think it's really, really valuable and I love it. It's all about people. So wherever you want to go, what separates you from the dream is just that person that like can enable you to do that. So if you want to get a job, you just need to talk to the person that's the decision maker to give you that job. And like, essentially you got to charm them or be honest with them, be authentic, you know, and essentially that's really the only thing that stands between you and getting there. Yeah. So it's all about people. And I think I love people and I love talking to people and getting to know people. And so that's sort of what's been really important for me. And when I started to practice architecture, I had an internship in Shanghai. And, you know, very standard. You go into the office and you do a lot of AutoCAD drawing, and then 5 p.m. you leave the office. That's it. And I miss that human element that I've always been very driven by, and also my ability to just be there and sort of creative in my creative mode, fire, passion. I didn't really have that experience. I was very much that CAD monkey, you know, another computer agent sitting there and drawing, clicking the mouse. And I didn't like that, to be honest. I really kind of caved in. I struggled in that space, and somehow then I decided, you know, and also part of this experience was actually realizing that a lot of the work that was being done, especially in China, you know, with big offices sort of getting involved with huge monumental projects or even urban planning sort of scale of things, I saw that a lot of that was very kind of, I would say, ego-driven, and maybe people were missing that element of sustainability, human-centered design, or even, you know, looking at economy really and putting things into context. And I've seen a lot of these mistakes, like beautifully designed cities that were unoccupied in China, or taking away land from indigenous people and mislocating them so that, you know, these huge corporations could come in and build. And of course it was a great playground for architects, but something was missing. And I think it really hurt me, like something got triggered in me. And I remember on the way to the office, I would always pass by this little square between buildings where it was just high walls and people living inside. And it looked like a really, really poor village inside of a big city, like pretty much next to People's Square in Shanghai. Not sure if it's still there, but it was certainly there in 2010 when I lived there. And on my way to the office, I would always pass that place. And I thought, how come, like, what is this poor people doing in the center of town? You know, where they come from and why is this particular place there? And as I researched it a little bit more, I found out that basically there were people that lived on this land originally, and then the land got just bought off by huge corporations. Probably the end result was that these people got very little money for this. Yeah. And then they just got like cramped into that horrible little place. And off we go, you know, economy's growing, Shanghai is becoming a big city, and these people are forgotten and actually didn't really get any value for the money or a better life, nothing. Like basically they're poverty. And it was that really touching. I thought, is there a way in architecture to be a little bit more alert about these sort of things and a bit more aware and to do soulful architecture? You know, is it possible to be more human-centered and not to have that sort of heavy guilt feeling that I was feeling whilst, you know, doing these projects also for the internship? And I think that's where it all started for me. And then referring to the conference that you speak of, it was a conference that I attended in Berlin shortly after my Shanghai internship, where that was already my quest to like find potentially new examples of how architecture can be practiced. Because believe it or not, in London, we haven't really been taught so much about how different applications of architecture. So we very much so followed this celebrity architecture culture. And, you know, I wasn't aware that there is such a thing as humanitarian architecture. I really wasn't. And so when I started to think, okay, I want to do things that are a little bit more meaningful, what would that mean for my career? Where would I go? I mean, how would I make money, you know? And so as you see, there's been a lot of frustration and looking for a meaning in all of it that basically resulted in a lot of different decision making and choices. And in that particular conference in Berlin, I remember it was a gathering of architects that actually did a lot of humanitarian work. And something that really struck me is how these people basically, they were traveling around the world, building a lot of projects from design to completion, so design build mostly, collaborating with communities, doing things that were meaningful. But also there's this sort of, their faces were like burnt to the sun, and they had these wrinkles in their eyes, like smiley, or like from, you know, maybe kind of tinting your eyes a little bit from the sun or whatever, but like their faces look different to what I was usually used to seeing in architects, like the seriousness and maybe like some, you know, being overworked, you know, that kind of different dynamic, different mimic in the face. And I sat there and I just thought, oh my God, I want to be this kind of architect. And that's sort of what drove me then to like read books like Barefoot Architect, you know, and slowly start to develop in that direction. And soon after, I actually took another leap of faith towards my dreams and moved to Guatemala without a language to do communitarian work, you know, in architecture. And that started another chapter.
Amazing. You know, it's just such a whirlwind, and, you know, even going to all these different countries and, you know, working and learning and living in places that you don't have the language, and, you know, learning all these new sort of skills and things like that. And I think in Guatemala, again, while you were learning new things, you were also coming across some challenges, I think, and you were almost, I think you referred to it as solving problems that people didn't want to pay for. So now you were coming across this sort of, you were able to get into some of the humanitarian and the community kind of spirited work, but then it was, how do you pay for this? So then you have that sort of problem, and how do you align this with a business mindset, and how do we make this sort of, I guess, financially viable so that we can help the community, but also live and make money as a business as well? Would that be fair?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think something that I want to add to it is that, you know, it might sound very flashy, like, wow, this girl, she's traveled, did, you know, internship here and there. My parents are actually very middle-class Polish family. Like, I have not been supported by my parents since I moved out from home at the age of 18. So I made everything happen by working as a waitress, nannying in England, and doing these sort of jobs where it was pretty much cash in hand, or, you know, something that was making me maybe, I don't know, £800 per month. And a lot of people after we graduated went to work for big names and big architecture firms. Some of them were maybe not paid the best, but still had that status, you know, living in London, working for this big guy and slowly hoping to advance. And I very early on left that journey. And so something I really want to mention is that it was associated with a lot of guilt and feeling of a failure. Like, the beginning of times when I decided to not continue with internships or work for the big guy, I started to feel like a little bit lost, a little bit, I don't know what to do now. You know, am I wasting my time? Am I falling behind? Will anyone now recruit me if I haven't, for example, worked for an architecture practice and grew my portfolio since I graduated? So there was all the time this like kind of fight within, and I didn't really have a role model or someone made like a little bit like a leader or someone older than me to tell me, hey, it's fine, you know, to find your way. Like, most of the people were doing what they were told or went to work, and I was really struggling, sort of. So eventually when I came up with this idea, okay, I'm going to move to Guatemala and do charity work, I actually ended up working there for $400 a month. So I barely paid like a small accommodation, and that was it. So I wasn't really making much. And then there came new experiences of realizing how the charity was operating and perhaps not delivering the most sustainable of projects. And you know, there was cases, for example, where most of the indigenous people were cooking outdoors. That's what they do. That's just how their culture goes. So they always have open kitchens because they cook on open fire. And the charity would build them a kitchen space, like we know traditionally, which was indoor, but these women didn't really know how to cook otherwise. And even if they got electric ovens, they didn't use them. They were using them as table, putting cloths over it and eating off it, but then still making a fire indoors. Within a few years from delivering this kind of help, people started to develop lung illnesses and problems and health problems, basically. And that was, you know, who was to blame for it was the architecture behind, you know, that sort of help, right? And so there was a lot of this sort of stupid things that were happening that, again, I started to get really frustrated over. And by that point, I really felt like, okay, now I invested, I don't know, 3 years of my life into this. I knew that, like, it's not really any way for me to go back to London and get a job now with Norman Foster with a bunch of mud huts I've built, you know? So I thought, let's just take it to the next level and start doing our own projects. And I started to fundraise. I started to look for sponsors. We grew a team and I started to manage construction sites, of course, without being fully titled an architect. I hired someone who was basically better educated than me. And I also had a local engineer I paid to get me all the permits for building. And so I was more like a project manager or like a leader or like an entrepreneur, but not actually, you know, operating within the full spectrum of how we understand architects to operate, right? But we still started to build quite a lot, and it was a great experience. I did doubt myself a lot on that journey, I must say, because it was all new. And I think towards the end, it became challenging in respect of the fact that, you know, I was eating sort of the experience of running a business with a massive spoon that sometimes wouldn't fit in my mouth, basically. It was like being fire hosed, you know, with experiences, having to take decisions, being a leader, and starting from little things like we built foundations and they collapsed because we were building in sand, because actually we're rebuilding village that was affected by a tsunami. And, you know, a bunch of money thrown away, all the builders looking at me, what we do now. So having to like take real strong leadership decisions as a woman, speaking Spanish as my third language, you know, being a gringa or a white person in Guatemala, having to manage sort of men within a very macho culture. That was definitely a challenge. But I think what really pushed all my buttons the most at the time was the entrepreneurship side of things. So basically, really, how you get clients. I was kind of uncomfortable negotiating my pay. I wasn't used to knowing how much I should charge for my services. So when I spoke with clients, I would like sweat and get really, really stressed. And you could see I couldn't, you know, negotiate my price or sell myself properly. And it's because I didn't have any experience. I didn't know, you know, what to do with it. And then also managing finances and everything was certainly a challenge. And so it all resulted in a struggle, but also I wasn't making money. And it was okay for the first 5 years because I was like, oh, it's a charity anyway. But at some point I was hitting 30 and I thought, I cannot be this broke in my 30s. I mean, swear to God. As great as this experience is, I cannot. And so I think by then I already knew that, you know, I'm an entrepreneur and I will continue starting businesses and, you know, causing these crazy challenging things to happen. So I better learn better about business and marketing. And that's really where I started to study business and marketing.
Yeah. And so from that journey, then how do you get from, okay, I'm going to start learning these things, I'm going to start learning business and marketing, because there'll be lots of people out there that are starting new businesses and then, you know, setting out on new journeys. So how do you get from that point then to sort of realizing, well, I want to become sort of my full potential. I want to be able to actually almost be that cheerleader that you never had. You know, you said that you felt quite lost when you were on that journey back Massively. When you were in, you know, in the early days. And I guess now what you do and the offer that you have in your services is to be that cheerleader and that someone for the next generation of people coming through those journeys. You know, I think it's really important that, you know, you made a bold decision to step away from the crowd, you know, turn your back on what the traditional route to architecture was, you know, and scary. You know, everyone else is in these big firms and, you know, having that status, and you're out in a field in Guatemala, and, you know, it's incredible. But I can appreciate at the time, it probably wouldn't have felt all that incredible some days, you know?
No, absolutely not. I mean, I operated a lot from a feeling of being lost and fearful. And I don't know if this just isn't like a little bit of a blueprint of what entrepreneurship is about. I mean, at the end of the day, you're taking lots of gambles and lots of risks. And, you know, one of the things that you didn't mention is a huge word for me is these people that had these internships, they had security. And I did not have security. No one could guarantee me that whether the projects and the investments or the money or the things that my decisions will pan out, and that I think it's quite natural that we all are afraid of failure. And if you're gambling a lot and you put your face there and you disappoint people, because you will, it's hard. It's really hard. Sometimes it's hard to sleep with this, or hard to live with that. So it was not easy. But I think that I just, first struggled, and then I needed to learn to give myself a little bit of a slack and actually learn to be better. And that's the whole thing. When you do things outside of how normally people operate, if you start a business, if you take time off from work, or if you don't have a stable income, or whatever you start, even a thing like this podcast, for the first 100 episodes, it's very hard to get a sponsor. So a lot of times when you listen to podcasts, these people are actually doing this for free because they love to. So appreciate the reality as well of how it is to start a business, or what it is like. And I think I kind of started to give myself a little bit more of a slack when I actually started to do business conferences, marketing conferences, surround myself with more entrepreneurs, and realize that I'm not alone. Because before that, I was very much in this kind of guilt trip, or, just questioning myself, like, what am I doing? But when I started to realize that there's more and more people around me, or I can connect with people that are actually living their life similarly and taking a gamble and working really hard, sometimes maybe keeping a full-time job because they have a family to support on top of it, and then staying up at night to write a book or start a website or start a coaching business or whatever. This is really where everything has been put into perspective. And I thought, maybe I didn't make so much money in my 20s, but at least I didn't have responsibility to take for a family. And it was a really good learning curve. And something that I learned in this training, within entrepreneurship, is that I have a value because of my experiences. Yeah. And because I was always looking at, do I have enough experience as an architect? Do I have enough experience as a business owner? Am I good enough for, whatever, like as a builder, as a designer, all that stuff. But actually, something that really has come down on me when I was doing all this training was, hey, you are a very strong person, and you're interesting just because of the way you think and what you do with your life and how you do things differently. And perhaps that could be the only value that will differentiate you. But if I own it, instead of being scared or all the time questioning myself, and operating out of that space of like fear, but owning it and being empowered by that exact thing that was getting me anxious before, then could I potentially build on that and be an example or a light for someone else? And I think, my story is not a story of, oh my God, yeah, when I was 23, I made $1 million and now I'm a business coach because I was so successful. My story is, I really fucked up, excuse my language. And from these mistakes, I've learned basically to be a little bit more authentic. And I think that that's what entitles me today to work with people, because I can understand. And if that doesn't speak to someone, you're not my client. But if it speaks to you, then we can achieve a lot of amazing things, because it's really a mindset shifts that can help your business and your career. It's not so much the expertise in business and marketing, because those tools, we can read about them, we can find information, right? Do courses. But also knowledge alone doesn't really change much. It's the way you apply it, and the way it allows you to change yourself first. That's where the power is, And I think that, when I had the realization within that, that's really when I started to grow more in like empowerment and owning myself more, and sort of owning my story as well. And as a result, really, like, a lot of beautiful things started to fruit from it now.
Yeah, I think as well, one thing that really resonated with me, you talk about ownership, and I think you've wrote on the subject before about making choices and the power that actually recognizing that we have choices, because sometimes I think people feel trapped, or the stories even that we tell ourselves. I've been guilty of it a long time, is telling myself your story doesn't maybe make you good enough, or doesn't maybe make you eligible to do this or to pursue that. But actually, when you choose to tell yourself something different, when you choose to tell yourself, actually, because of your experiences, that's where your value is, and owning that.
Yeah.
Making that realization that there is a choice in that, rather than just feeling trapped by things as well.
Yeah. And, you know, I really love psychology, and I study, or whenever I can, I read about it. And for example, one thing that really stuck with me is, if you think that you know something as a fact, like this is your truth, right? For example, I don't know, maybe I'm not experienced enough to do this or whatever. Ask yourself, is it really so? And is that really true? Because what's true for you, you need to actually see the principles that are driving that belief. And if that belief, for example, came because when you were 5, you were, you know, playing a game, you know, in the playground, and someone told you, no, you're not good enough, or they chose you to the team last, and you told yourself, I'm always last, I'm not good enough, I don't belong with the big guys, and so that is driving your decision, then that's really a way of thinking of a 5-year-old, not a mature person. So sometimes it's really worth it to examine your beliefs and to say, hey, where's this really coming from? I mean, am I really like that bad, or is it just something I've been telling myself? And is this true? Or is this just a way in which I've been seeing myself that's been disempowering, you know? And that really can help. And I think that realizing that in the world, we have so many different perspectives on things, just as many people, this many perspectives. And one situation can, for one person, be very traumatic, for another might be very empowering. So how can one set of events influence 2 people differently? It's because of the way they perceived it, how they've seen it. And so if we just try to, at least try to give ourselves another story, right? Maybe something that can empower us a little bit more about our past, or about the way we do business, or how we relate to people, or how good of a designer we are, or whether or not we could potentially start a business and take more responsibility. All of this can be that igniter for change, really. And then that change kind of happens simultaneously with what's, you know, it's reflected in inner and outer. Because as you change your life, a lot of things will change, you know, and you can't even tell inside or outside, you just know things changed. And I love that, you know, because through making maybe risky decisions, or being a little bit more like giving myself more chances at life, I get to live a more interesting life, you know. And for example, today, after I've been running this coaching business for a few years, I realized that I still very much love to travel, and I want to continue doing that. So I became more and more determined to make my business work so that I can freely travel. And then I also recently started to skydive, which is an incredible challenge. I absolutely love it. It terrifies me every day I do it. And you know, I just thought skydiving is really expensive, so I basically just need to really commit to my business to start making more, so I can enjoy life more. And I don't think anymore how I'm gonna do it. I just realized I just want to have a better life, yet a better life, or, you know. And so some things that maybe for some people it's like a big deal to leave your job, for other people it's like, well, let's make money online, you know, let's move online so I can be free and travel. And all of this is progression. You can do everything, you know, really everything. And I think that there is completely no limit at opportunities and dreams, you know. There's no cap like this, there's no ceiling, honestly.
You can do whatever your heart tells you, really, if you've got the mind to sort of take a bit of a chance on yourself, I think, you know.
Exactly. And do things that scare you. I swear to God, it just wonders for your brain. Like something happens in your brain and you just start growing a muscle of I can. And trust me, when I get to 4,000 feet up in the sky and the door opens, no matter what experience I got and parachute and whatever, I'm always like, my lizard brain says, what the heck are you doing? This is opposite to survival. Don't. But then I'm like, no, it's okay. I've got the skills. I know what I'm doing. Let's have fun, you know? And every single day doing something tiny that scares you, but you just start examining this muscle. And I think that's needed for relationships, for everything. And personal growth goes hand in hand with business, you know. And another thing that I think is really important to mention is that architecture might be presented in a very traditional way, and how you know it is a very traditional industry. But nowadays, with internet, with social media, with technology, we can do so many things to provide value for one another, and all of this can translate into making money. So you're no longer limited to see yourself only as a person that can provide design in exchange for money, and you're no longer limited to work in a traditional way for your money by exchanging time for money. Think about how other people make money by exchanging value, by selling online products, coaching, you know, courses, teaching, selling books. There's so many different ways in which you can grow as an expert in your practice in architecture, niching out into what you really love, whether it's sustainability or, you know, human-centered design or whatever it is, could be facades or engineering. But being able to become this all-round person and represent yourself, not putting your future in someone else's hands, but just standing up and saying, you know what, I will publish my book. I will position myself as an expert. I will coach and teach, and I'll speak at conferences, and I'll grow my career on my own. And that's an interesting journey. You can do it to start with part-time, but it is like a journey of self-discovery, you know. And I really, really encourage you, if you're on the fence or you're thinking that this could be interesting for you, to try, because it is a personal growth experience after all.
No, I think definitely there's something about that comfort zone, and the, you know, where we grow is you've got to get a little bit uncomfortable with that. And I think, you know, one of my exercise coaches says, you know, it's getting sort of comfortably uncomfortable, you know, getting uncomfortable, you're getting comfortable with the uncomfortable, putting yourself out there a little bit, stretching that rubber band just a little bit more the next time. You know, maybe for you in the plane, it'll be going up another few thousand feet the next time, or, you know, a different location or something like that. And it really does make us grow.
Absolutely.
So all of this sounds super exciting and super high charged, I guess, sometimes. What do you do for downtime apart from skydiving? Do you do other sort of self-care things? What do you do for
yeah, I love to take baths. Honestly, I'm an addict. I do this almost every day in the evening. Candles, bathtub, this sort of stuff. I love it. I read books as well. I spend a lot of time with my animals. I have a dog that I walk and a cat that I cuddle with. Yeah. And they sort of tick all the boxes, you know, of like watching Netflix cuddled up, or going out and hiking in the mountain with your dog. But yeah, like I do, I'm just like a normal person, you know. I watch too much TV, sometimes Netflix mainly, you know.
We're all guilty of that at times, you know.
Yeah, I procrastinate and all that stuff. But I also try to, and I think I try to do things that relate to my interests, so I don't force myself towards doing anything. But I try to, you know, and exercise and go to the gym and swim and just have fun with things, you know. So as much as I feel that everything is in some kind of moderation, then I'm satisfied and happy. And yeah, but you know, I've also worked through depression in my life, and so I think that sometimes when I build these stronger days, I can come to a lot of appreciation of them, you know, because of the past struggle that I experienced and how I struggled maybe to take myself out of it. So I think that, yeah, it's worth to remember that a lot of times when we get challenges, when we have a, you know, maybe a more challenging time, eventually it's to put things into better perspective and help us appreciate and just get up and, you know, and get stronger. And basically, yeah, it's something about it.
The times in the struggle really do help us to learn how to manage those times as well, you know, and as we get stronger and as we grow, we learn more, and, you know, we put in things like self-care. We know, actually, I need to lie in the bath for a couple of hours. I need to get my book out, or actually, do you know what, tonight I just need to put Netflix on and binge something, you know. And that's perfectly fine, you know. And I think, you know, there's so much about, oh, don't do this and don't do that, and you must be up at 5 o'clock in the morning. But actually, it's find what works for you. Find something you enjoy, something that actually calms you, or, you know, chills you, or gives you a chance to breathe from all the wonderful stuff that we do. And I think that's really important. So thank you for sharing those things with us. Just before we sort of close up, I just want to give you an opportunity to tell us about the types of clients that you look to work with. I think you focus on maybe 3 types of architect that's your main focus. If you want to maybe just let us know what those clients maybe look like, and maybe give us an overview of your services that you offer. You know, you've got your podcasts and you do training and events. If you want to give us a little overview, just so people know what all the amazing stuff that Sara can offer, would be fab.
Pleasure. So essentially, I love working with the type of clients that are looking for personal growth and are looking to invest in themselves to become better entrepreneurs, better business owners, and actually want to make money, because I really believe that a lot of things come down to abundance. And so it resonates with me to give back and make more or attract more through giving back. So I love this sort of mindset or way of approaching reality and creating businesses that are conscious, that are in service, and also positioning yourself in a position, a powerful position, you know, through that. So essentially, I work with architects that are looking to find better clients, better projects, to define a better communication strategy that presents them to the world in a more authentic light. And we use a lot of digital transformation techniques to make your life easier, so that you don't have to spend all your days, you know, approaching clients, but we can use tools to do it for you. And then you just follow up with just the hot leads. So we have, we're equipped with a lot of digital marketing tools and sales techniques that help the process. And the 3 types of clients that I serve are architects that are working for someone else who are looking to start a business. People who work in academia and are wanting to position themselves as experts. So basically publish their work, start to speak more, and build an academic profile that is stronger, and potentially also start making money from consulting in your field or collaborating with other architecture practices as an expert. So basically mainly leading with your expertise in consultancy. And then the 3rd type of clients are business owners who want to grow their business. And I have worked with small practices, medium-sized, but also practices that make over 4 million turnover per year. So really any scale clients. And here we focus mostly on your communication strategy and sales. So very much so cracking on the numbers, understanding very well how to set up campaigns and who your ideal client is. Because I realized that a lot of times people sell architecture, but sometimes don't know whether the people you're selling to are the ones that really need it or resonate with your message. So it's very important to sort of focus that in and get the clarity that is needed to run your business and grow it forward. And so those are sort of the clients, mostly the clients I work with, and I provide a lot of different services. We can do one-on-one consulting. I have masterminds where you can go join a group. That's sort of a cheaper program, or also I have online courses that help you grow a business and also leverage digital tools. So those are mainly, you get the information, but you implement everything on your own. Okay. So either we do it for you, with you, or you implement it all on your own. But essentially, that's kind of how the business model works.
So there's plenty of options for many different clients that may be interested, which is really good to know. Would you be able to give us an example of when a client really excelled from, you know, one of your programs, or, you know, just something that, you know, really blew you away from some of the lessons that you maybe helped someone with, and then they came up with something that, you know, you didn't expect?
I mean, I think that I'm always, I feel really warm in my heart when we start doing sessions and I get a client who doesn't really quite know exactly what sort of business he would start or she would start, and what sort of, you know, what could they do, right? A lot of times clients come to me and they say, I want to start a business, I don't really know what. And just in few sessions, we start to understand better who they are. And I think that it also works like a mirror. They get to know themselves better through it. And actually, I think in the first sort of initial surprise, a lot of times it's to realize what sort of amazing businesses can come from these people. I don't oppose my ideas onto my clients. A lot of times we do self-discovery workshops and they lead us to an answer, so that your soul can choose really the best case scenario and the sort of life or career that you would mostly enjoy. Because sometimes we don't realize that some implications of a dream might be hard to take, like too many hours in front of a computer, or maybe having a physical office that you need to pay for. Maybe those ideas of how we envision business is not the best for us. So I love that initial change. But for example, working 3 months with an architect in San Francisco, we did a lot of clarity sessions. He had a business, he's 60 something. He had a business for about 40 years and he was mostly in residential, and his dream was to move to a more public building. And when we were doing our workshops, he would always say, I really want to work for Tesla. That's my dream, Elon Musk. And I was like, okay, let's, take it one step at a time. And I don't know how, but he landed a project with Elon Musk, and they're doing a factory building in San Francisco. And, it's incredible, because when you get the clarity, it's almost like you send to the universe like a very clear message of what you want, and that thing comes in its purest form. So the work needs to be done on you, like what exactly you want and like what sort of clients you want to work with, rather than sweating on who do I need to meet and what should I say and whether I should have this portfolio or that portfolio, or am I good enough or not. No, it's all about you inside, and so those were definitely sort of most gratifying experiences, and I really enjoy it. And I can't really tell you how it happens. It's just collaboration and clarity, and a lot of things come from that. A lot of opportunities come from that.
Yeah, no, I think there's definitely something to be said for that sort of energy of manifestation, and just going after that one thing that you really want to go after. So just to wrap up, what would be your top 3 tips for someone who is maybe looking to align their career with their authentic selves and values, like what you've done? What would your top 3 tips be? I think we've probably covered them throughout the chat, but just to condense them down so that we can give focus.
So honestly, the first thing is take risks and don't punish yourself so much. Give yourself a slack and some self-love. It's okay to make mistakes. They make you stronger. And it might sound crazy or like, something that people repeat a lot, but it's really, really true. It's really true. You grow through mistakes, and it's okay to make them. The second thing is do things that scare you. Basically, really do, because it helps exercise a muscle of inner confidence, or something that actually builds a better you for the future. And the third thing is, and I really mean it, not because I'm a business mentor, but like most of the time when I was really, really lost, I needed someone to come in and give me a good advice, or to hold my hand for a little bit, and open up to mentorship, open up to finding someone who understands you and is dedicated to helping. And it's a little bit untraditional yet in architecture to go and hire a business mentor or get some coaching in that direction, but it becomes more and more popular. And as you mentioned already, Anna, you also have coaches and you also have people that support you. And I have the same, guys, both in skydiving, in the gym, in singing. I sing, and I need to have a teacher. Otherwise, I don't know how I sing. I can't tell you, whether I'm making progress or not. And same with business. I'm surrounded by business coaches. Some of them are strictly sales oriented and help me with sales and creating campaigns. Others more marketing oriented. But because I've been doing this for over 6 years now or something like that, I'm becoming better and better at it myself. Yeah. And so that's really important. And so open up to those things.
Yeah, I totally agree with the mentorship as well. You know, I think we all, no matter what level you're at, I think you can make use of having a mentor, someone who's walked the path just slightly ahead of you to give you that insights in some direction. So that's really fabulous. Could you tell us where our listeners can find you if they want to connect with you and learn more or listen to your podcast? Because there's amazing loads of resources that you have out there, and I'm sure people would really find them useful. So if you tell us where you are online or on socials that people can find you, that would be great.
So I have a lot of social media platforms. Probably the strongest are YouTube and LinkedIn. You can find me on both of them on Sara Kolata, Kolata with a K. But I really recommend just checking out the website, sarakolata.com, because you'll find all the shows, all the different interviews, my blog, and my podcasts. And then also, if you subscribe to the mailing list, you'll get notified about events and training and webinars that I organize. Soon in March, there is a bigger conference that I'm organizing, which is all about business of architecture. And we're going to bring under one roof, basically leaders from top 15 architecture practices, including Big, Zaha Hadid, Norman Foster, Chipperfield, Heatherwick, you know, you name it, SOM, Gensler, Arab, OMA. So it is really, it's going to be an incredible event. I'm really looking forward to it. And we're going to talk all things business. So you see, through these kind of things, there's a lot of learning. But if you are interested to potentially speak to me, you can also book through my calendar on sarakolata.com/contact. Just book a 20-minute free chat with me and say hello. We can get to know each other and see if we're a good fit to work together.
Awesome. Thank you so much. We'll include the link to your website and the socials that you mentioned in the show notes anyway, so that people can directly get there from the show notes in the podcast. Thank you so much for sharing these amazing insights, Sara. It's been amazing. Honestly, the way you've worked to sort of orchestrate and design, you know, I mean, it sounds a bit corny saying that an architect has designed a life that allows you to sort of live congruently with the values that you have as a, you know, humanitarian, with that added benefit of helping others to do the same. Really remarkable, and it's been excellent to talk to you and really inspiring. I'm not sure I want to go out for a skydive yet, but you know, it's really fired me up. So thank you so much for that. I really appreciate your time this afternoon.
Thank you. And I must say, I absolutely love the podcast. I love that you're sharing stories on this podcast that are not your traditional way of maybe talking about yourself. I really love to have the opportunity to also open up a little bit more about my story to your audience. So thank you for creating that space for all of us as guests. And also a huge thank you to the audience, because I think it's incredible that you guys are tuning into this content. It's really authentic, valuable, and yeah, and I really hope that, you know, that this grows bigger than Anna even can imagine.
Thank you. Well, I'm certainly inspired from your advice about you know, taking risks, and by that sort of manifestation, I'll need to go and write down some goals. Maybe not Elon Musk for me, but some stage somewhere, I'll need to write down a goal. So thank you so much. To our listeners, whether you're bouncing back or storming forward, the Determinator is here